Please.
Could yeah. So hi. So I'm the track moderator. I think we're supposed to start in 10 minutes or at 11:10, right? So I'm just gonna uh I think you're on mute, Shivani ji.
So sorry. How's your day been so far? I'm sure it's been extremely busy.
No, this is second session. We had this very interesting panel in the last
I was watching it, yes.
oh yeah, so amazing women. So it was really started off great. Started off very well.
Absolutely. So this is from 11:10 to 11:25.
25. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And is it possible for me to also get the record permission? I think I can. I'm not sure.
I think so. I'll just message the host.
All right. And you have some great sessions lined up for today. Yeah, I was just wondering because there's so many tracks. I was just wondering where do I like see, where do I not see. It was quite nice and quite a great initiative that you all do every year. In fact, I think it's so interesting to have. I mean, the platform in itself is so global. I think because I keep seeing the other events as well on the website, where one is happening in some completely different part of the world. So I don't know how you all manage to coordinate this. It's quite crazy.
So I'm part as here as track moderator. So the actual backend work is being done by another very dedicated group. And I had the same thing because the 10 o'clock in the morning, I was looking at all the sessions and saying, oh, I want to be in all of them. Really asking if they will be recorded. So I know.
That's
Very
good.
interesting.
That the recording is there. I'm sure. Is this recording going to be made available elsewhere also?
I'm not sure. I'm hoping it will be.
All right. No worries at all.
Yeah. So yeah.
Do let me know when I have that permission to record, and I'll just make sure that I'll do the same.
Yeah, so I think what I will do is I will put myself on mute and turn off video and try calling them because I think they're not responding. Yeah, just okay. So apparently recording permission can't be given to anyone other than the web host.
All right.
But everything will be available on web TV after the whole thing. So you can download it from there.
Be okay as well.
Yeah.
Any suggestions you have for me? I'm sure you would have been seeing the speakers before this.
No, not at all. So only thing is, I think in 15 minutes exactly, it just closes the session. That's what happened last time. So, so you need to finish it.
Yeah, of course. Now I try to make sure that I stick to my 12 minutes. And I think someone had mentioned to me that in the 3 minutes, there's some sort of award that is being given out to someone else. Or is that the case?
No, it's actually an award for you, and I will be announcing it right at the beginning itself. So then once I finish talking, you have the rest of the until 11:25.
Yes, that's not a problem.
So yeah. So
I'm also quite curious about the portal, by the way, because I got lost in the sense, like in a good way. I was extremely engrossed in it yesterday because it's so interactive. I think where you can connect with other people also. I think that's pretty great. I mean, I'm extremely impressed by just the entire organization and the timeliness of the event. It's so rare to see this because. Like I've attended events before, and there's always some hiccup. The whole digital problem, now. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm glad that you all have circumvented that so well.
No, I think the backend team is really amazing. They've been working for at least 3 to 4 months on this
Wow.
constantly.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been
Yeah.
I was part of this WhatsApp group. I mean, I haven't been very actively part of it, but I've been just looking at what's going on. So
No, I would love to
it's very
learn more
impressive.
about the portal. I'll maybe contact you and you can put me in touch with whoever else. This is extremely useful. So if like this is just a service you can avail, then I think this will be very helpful for lots of different places.
Do you
Mm.
have an email address? Yeah, I'm sure they'll be contacting you by email, so you can talk to them. Maybe I can also send you my email address in case you want
100% I'll do that.
to. Sure. So in case you don't hear from them, you could message me. Okay. So apparently the video is going live.
Perfect.
So welcome to the the Women's Economic Forum, Shivani Bagdaiji. You're the founder of Tri Chambers, and you're going to be talking about the evolution of family businesses. Before you start, the Women Economic Forum is also very thrilled to announce that we will be awarding you, conferring on you the award of Exceptional Leader of Excellence for all your contribution to entrepreneurship in general. So very excited to hear what you have to say today, and welcome to the session.
Thanks so much, Tilotma. And hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I've been asked to talk about the evolution of family businesses, and I've been working with family businesses for a long time now. I come from a family business myself, and now I consult family businesses across different management verticals. And in the numerous conversations I've had with the families of these family businesses, I've always been fascinated with the questions that are raised about longevity and effectiveness of such businesses. And not just from third parties, but sometimes from within the family itself. And these questions in themselves always make me smile. For with all of this focus on family businesses, we really do fail to acknowledge that even before there were LLPs or OPCs or Delaware corporations or public and private limited companies, all businesses were family businesses. And therefore, it has clearly been far too long for these questions to still be around. So, this is what I'm going to try and do today. I'm going to try and talk about some of those very common characteristics that regularly pop up when we're trying to size up a family business. And for those of us who are in the practice of dealing with family businesses, we know that we're not climbing a very steep slope. So let me begin with the most basic fact. A family business is comprised of different family members, and family members have an inherent familial trait that allows them to create a familial environment, even with those who are not part of the family. Now, a business is comprised of people, and it is these people that are critical for the business's success. Companies spend years and decades to form a stable leadership at the top who can be dedicated, consistent, and in sync with each other. And at the same time, work effectively with talent to motivate them to achieve goals and objectives. And unifying people towards common purposes is no easy task. With family businesses, though, this comes almost naturally. A family has already formed bonds which are strong and deep rooted between each other. Their feeling of obligations and accountabilities are by default high, and where decisions are driven by beyond just commercial objectives and involve emotions, this is visible to the employees who work for them. Now, this is of course perceived as a negative because it is almost rational to assume that mixing business and personal objectives lead to catastrophic outcomes. There are enough legends and ghost stories to support this. But that's the thing. Most successful family businesses also know this. And because they know it, they also account for it. Conflicts have always been common between people. And we all know they're even more common when it comes to family. But there are always mechanisms through which business is kept at the forefront. While emotions are more strongly expressed before family, they're also easily manageable when you're talking to someone you've known for all your life. Conflicts don't find their form in backroom politics or via hushed tones in tense environments. Conversations are more open and honest, and an understanding between family members is always present. Families have the potential to create a strong leadership, one where people actually care for each other and not just the money. This circumvents top level conflicts to automatically create the family like environment that organizations are always struggling to achieve. But now let's move on to examine those members in a business who are not related to the family but form an equally crucial part of the company. We all know a business is not just its leadership, it is a sum of each and every individual that is contributing to its functioning. And in the cases of family businesses, it is very common to assume that non family members end up feeling like they will always be living in the guest house or dining at the kids' table. Such a perception really calls to question meritocracy. It creates an environment where talented individuals reconsider their future in the company. The idea that the ultimate control, power, ownership, and decision making will always reside at the top is very tough to beat. However, what we don't give enough importance to is the fact that family businesses are also part of this increasingly competitive world. When it comes to sound business decisions, the objectives of the company have and continue to take priority. While the family may always be the gatekeeper with respect to ownership, every other function is open to a meritocratic progression. Numerous family businesses have a board of directors, non family CXOs, as well as other senior level management who are not related to the business. Or they reach out to people like me who can provide a third party overview of best practices. After all, even they know that however big their family may be, there will never be enough people to run each and every aspect of the business. And this recognition is what helps differentiate between family run businesses and family owned businesses. When the latter, the focus is always on ensuring that competence is the defining factor that determines progression and decisions at the company. And this brings me to my next point on the perceived rigidity with respect to goals, objectives, and vision in a family business. It is a fact that family owned businesses will always retain the vision of the family, or more specifically, the founding member of the business. But this is also a fact for any other company. A vision is always legacy, whether it is the family members or not. And legacy needs to be protected till such time that it is adding value to the business. Let me step out of family businesses for a second and take, for example, Apple. No matter how much the business has changed, grown, and evolved, Steve Jobs will always remain the visionary behind Apple. His initial motivation for the company is still what drives people. It is his legacy which has been protected for numerous reasons. And just like Steve Jobs with Apple, the same is true for family businesses, where the vision of S.N. Birla is the motivator behind the Birla Group. Ardashir and Pirojsha Godrej's motivations continue to drive the Godrej Group. But this in no way means that all those who have come after these individuals have not gotten the opportunity to set new goals and objectives for the company, or that they are still following the same practices that were set by the founders. Banding together behind a legacy-like vision is more about leveraging the reputation of the founders than it is about placing importance on some emotional factor. It is not uncommon for family businesses to rebrand themselves to suit the objective because the focus is always on business objectives. Now that we've spoken a bit about the vision and leadership, and before that about the relevance of non-family members, another important aspect that is deeply scrutinized, and for good reason as well, is the transitions in leadership from one generation to another. And more often than we think, for any non-founding generation of a family business, they are concerned as well. They're well aware of the fact that there are people in the company who have been functioning for longer and that perhaps these people are more qualified. No one wants to be known as the child of nepotism, for it does not make good business or personal sense. Our work ends up defining us in numerous ways. The first question we ask people when we meet them for the first time is, what do you do? Good, bad, or ugly, our work is a part of our identity. It gives us purpose. And therefore, most successful family businesses have stopped making assumptions about the inevitable involvement of the family in the business. What these successful family businesses do is that they deliberately create conditions where the new family member is slowly inducted into the business and is made aware of the potential value that the business can add to them on a personal level as well. Whether this is through letting them try and fail on inconsequential tasks, have unending and open conversations with senior management, or even letting them venture out on their own within or outside the business. Family businesses are becoming heavily aware of the consequences of inducting a new family member as the future leader solely based on bloodline. And now, everything I've spoken about so far contributes to the perception that family businesses have. And being mindful of time, this is the last thing that I will be touching on. All of the misconceptions I've spoken about so far contribute to how family businesses are viewed internally and externally. And the reason why questions arise in the first place is because while family businesses are already taking steps to address common concerns, they don't do much to manage their perception consciously. For their actions to match their perception, they need to actively project themselves before all of their stakeholders. And such a process has to first start internally, before the company's employees, where the increased attention towards actively addressing these misconceptions through both their words and, most importantly, their actions will strengthen the perception of the family and drive the manner in which employees work in the company. And this will inevitably contribute to the manner in which the company is viewed externally, where external stakeholders will take cue from what they hear and see to form their own judgments, which will help them decide on the terms of their engagement with the company, irrespective of whether they are future employees, clients, investors, or shareholders. And therefore, the talent that such companies attract, their contribution to the organization, the engagement with external stakeholders, and the trust placed in the business is all impacted by perception. So there's one area where there's blatant room for improvement for family businesses, then that is perception management. And that brings me to my final message of the day to everyone who's listening. Irrespective of whether you are someone who works in a family run business or are someone who's leading the business or are looking to take more charge, the potential that your company holds is tremendous because of the inherent characteristics of a family business, which cannot be replicated by any other business structure. As part of a family business, all it will take from you is to pay attention to some of the things I've mentioned, of course, amongst many others, and you will instantly find yourself to be in a position to adapt and implement all the other best practices that other business structures have to offer, with the addition of the familial aspect that is already inherent in your company, leaving the room for making a well-run family business to be head and shoulders above the others. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Shivani ji, for that very enlightening talk. I think we still have a few minutes, so I just want to ask you a very quick question, if you can answer it. So how do you think the family business structure has changed, based on pretty much every country's single child or two child policy, as opposed to having lots of children who could then take over different roles?
Absolutely. So I think in two ways, this is how it's changed. So one is that family offices are increasingly becoming aware of succession planning as to how is it that the business will be managed. And the second and most importantly, I think it is about ensuring that they have the right mechanisms in place. So I think the misconception that is usually very common is that only family members can handle each and every aspect of the business. So, say for example, a family has four children, and then each of the four are placed in different verticals or different offices in different locations. But the way that businesses usually run is that there is a whole layer of mid-level management. There's a whole layer of second in command individuals who are not part of the family, but they have been perhaps been engaging with the family business from years. And at the same time, I think when families are doing succession planning, keeping in mind that they have only one or two children, they also account for the fact that they need to attract more talent and the fact that they need to really nurture talent in their company to grow. Because, like any other company, you want the best people working for you, and you want to make sure that these people also continue to work for you. And I think that is really where family businesses are evolving with the times to ensure that they remain competitive in this huge and vast market.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a really enlightening topic.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.